Before the UFC introduced its women's division, Strikeforce was the premier home of top-level female talent, with many of its roster going on to become champions and MMA legends. Today we look at the division's 4-year existence, a tenure many consider as the golden age of women's 135. Welcome to the INC, and this is the story of Strikeforce's women's division. The origins of the women's division can be traced to Strikeforce's forerunner, Elite XC. Formed in 2007, Elite XC was an ambitious promotion that branded itself as a viable threat to the UFC, and became the first promotion to host a televised women's match when Gina Carano beat Julie Kedzie in the company's inaugural event. Elite XC continued hosting women's matches throughout its tenure, but despite critical and commercial acclaim, the company were accused of treating their matches as attractions rather than legitimate fights, an insinuation fueled by questionable matchmaking for their star fighter, Carano. When Elite XC folded a year later, Strikeforce inherited the majority of their female roster, and continued their successors' momentum by introducing titles for their women. This culminated in August 2009, when Carano's featherweight bout with Cris Cyborg became the first women's main event for a major MMA promotion, with Cyborg winning the fight by first-round stoppage. As Carano phased herself out of the sport, Cyborg began a reign of dominance in the featherweight division. But the company realized her one-sided destructions weren't enough to hold interest long-term, and began shifting attention to their previously overlooked Bantamweight class. Bantamweight had been largely anonymous for its early run. While Tara La Rosa and Roxanne Modafferi flew its flag in the pioneer years, their achievements were restricted to overseas regional promotions. By 2009, Strikeforce had assembled a solid stable of 135ers, including stars from Japan's Smack Girl promotion and previously signed talent moving down from featherweight. The division's first star came in the form of Sarah Kaufman. Kaufman had been a regular fixture of the Canadian regional scene, building an 8-0 record with all of her victories coming by strikes, before decision wins over Shayna Baszler and company newcomer Miesha Tate. This led Kaufman to a match with 12-1 Takayo Hashi, with the winner becoming Strikeforce's first ever Bantamweight champion. Kaufman dominated the grappling ace with jabs and right hands while avoiding every attempt to take the fight to the ground, granting her a unanimous decision and setting the ball rolling at 135. Kaufman's first title defense came against fan favorite Roxanne Modafferi at a Strikeforce Challengers event in Washington. The fight proved a conflict of styles, with Modafferi controlling the first with her grappling and Kaufman getting the upper hand in the striking exchanges, but both knew they needed to make an impact going into the third round. It was Kaufman that managed to break through in spectacular fashion.
Modafferi very active on the bottom end. Kaufman picks it up! Oh, wow! The powerbomb slam! It's over! Mamma mia!
Kaufman's knockout quickly went viral on social media, igniting interest in the division and leading bosses to move it from their Challenger Series to a regular fixture on main cards. Within a few months, women's bantamweight became one of Strikeforce's most popular weight classes, pulling some of the company's highest ratings with fights trademarked for their scrappy, fast-paced action. During this time, Strikeforce recruited a number of fighters that went on to become established stars, including Germaine de Randamie, future Bellator champion Liz Carmouche, and Alexis Davis, who came to public conscience with her second-round stoppage of Amanda Nunes. Kaufman, meanwhile, would face another pioneer in Marlis Kunin, winner of the first ever Women's MMA Championship back in 2000. Kunin had recently failed in a featherweight title bid against Cris Cyborg, with the Kaufman fight marking the Dutch women's first venture at 135. A clinch-heavy opening was awoken when Kaufman reversed a hip toss at the end of the second, but it didn't deter Kunin from taking the fight to the ground, locking in an armbar in the middle of the third and handing Kaufman the first loss of her pro career.
She got it. She got it!
Kunin vindicated her title win with a fourth-round stoppage of Liz Carmouche, but questions were soon raised over how long the veteran would remain champion. In March 2011, the UFC's parent company Zuffa purchased a controlling stake in Strikeforce, and with Dana White known as a vocal critic of women's MMA, many felt Zuffa would use the takeover to shut down the division. Longtime MMA executive Shannon Knapp was so spooked by the rumor, it led her to form the all-female promotion Invicta, as a refuge for discarded fighters. Amidst growing uncertainty, Coonan made her second title defense against Miesha Tate, who bounced from her loss to Kaufman with a 5-fight winning streak. Coonan used her jiu-jitsu to neutralize Tate's wrestling, nearly catching her in a guillotine before spending most of the second round threatening submissions on Tate's back. Tate, however, has always been trademarked for her toughness, and after finally getting her wrestling game going, she outmuscled Coonan through the third and fourth rounds, before taking a page from her opponent's playbook with an arm triangle choke.
Just like Tate, Coonan has never been submitted. As he submits her! Wow, what a performance by Miesha Tate!
Tate submitted the grappling ace 3 minutes into the fourth round, a fight that showcased the scrappy resilience that came to define her career. With Kaufman riding her own winning streak, all roads pointed towards Tate trying to avenge her prior loss, until a new face turned the division and the sport on its head. In August 2011, Ronda Rousey made her Strikeforce debut against 4-1 Sarah D'Amelio. Rousey entered the promotion with much fanfare, having been the first American judoka to medal in the Olympics and making easy work of her regional opponents, with all 4 of her pro and amateur fights ending in the first 60 seconds. Rousey continued the run with wins over D'Amelio and Julia Budd, and added with her good looks and brazen personality, the company immediately recognized star potential. All roads pointed to Rousey challenging Cyborg for her featherweight title, but the Rowdy one instead dropped a weight class to challenge Tate at 135. A decision which made strong business sense, but seen as undeserved by hardcore fans. Tate vs. Rousey marked Strikeforce's first women's main event since Karana Cyborg 3 years earlier, with the two combatants further hyping the fight with several months of acrimonious trash talk.
Everything about her is better on paper. Her fights look better on paper. Photos look better on paper than she does in person. Her trash talking looks much better on paper than it actually is if you listen to her talk.
A highly anticipated match would live up to all expectations, as Rousey threatened with an early submission, only for Tate to survive the hold as the fight ascended to a series of fast-paced scrambles. Rousey managed to land a second judo throw before securing her trademark armbar, and when Tate refused to submit to the hold, there was only one brutal outcome.
Oh, she's gonna break it.
After 5 fights and 8 minutes of ring time, Rousey had reached the sport's summit, but her triumph would only be the beginning, as Dana White announced he'd reverse plans to close the class and instead bring a women's division to the UFC. White cited the quality of the match along with Rousey's star power as key factors in his decision, although later reports suggested White had committed to the class long before Rousey's victory. Strikeforce's final women's fights took place on August 18, 2012, with Germaine de Randamie beating Hiroko Yamanaka and Miesha Tate's dramatic comeback win over Julie Kedzie. Appropriately, the main event saw Rousey defend her title against Kaufman, the division's last champion, taking on its first in a generational changing of the guard. It would end in fast and somewhat inevitable fashion.
And it's over! Ronda Rousey continues to amaze me! Are you kidding me?
Rousey was formally crowned Bantamweight champion at the UFC on Fox press conference, successfully defending her belt against Liz Carmouche in the main event of UFC 157. The new class continued where its predecessor left off, with its fighters, many of them Strikeforce alum, continuing their rep for fast-paced, all-action wars, culminating in November of 2015 when Rousey took on Holly Holm in the largest attendance in UFC history at the time. Women's bantamweight is one of the weakest weight classes in modern MMA, but it's easy to forget how important it was. Strikeforce's division proved women's MMA could exist in a top-level promotion, and encouraging execs to take chances in promotions outside of 135. Most of Strikeforce's veterans have long since retired, but those still competing should be commended for their part in women's MMA's golden age. Hey, this is the INC. Please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a video. Or we'll armbar you.